The following program is presented live by Grafing Productions.
Okay, well, now that we have the microphone turned on, I'll start all over again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are again. It's Wednesday night. We're coming up to Memorial Day weekend. When we first were quarantined back in March, they said that everything would open up on April 7th. I guess that shows us how much we can believe the politicians. Well, they did say April 7th. They just didn't tell us what year. Anyway, here we are again at the end of May, and we're still doing our virtual concerts because the entertainment venues have yet to open up, at least here in the state of Ohio. So wherever you may be, we're pleased to be able to come to you for the next hour or so and try to offer a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of what we sort of call live entertainment. I guess that's an appropriate title. So thank you for joining us. My name is Ragtime Rick. As usual, we have Banjo, Betsy on the 4-string banjo. That's the tenor banjo. And Wes Linenkugel on the 4-string bass. That's the string bass. And we're going to play a song. We're going to start off with a tune that's just a good time song, and everybody enjoys it. So we're going to see if we remember how to play the old Alabama Jubilee. If I remember right, it goes something like this. If I really remember it right, it'll go exactly like this. 1, 2, 1. Alabama Jubilee. Collins and Harlan never sang it like that. If you're old enough to remember Collins and Harlan, well, you're older than I am. They were gone long before I was born. But anyway, they were the ones that made that a big hit song around 100 years ago or so, maybe a little more than that. The Alabama Jubilee. Well, we're coming up to Memorial Day weekend, which is the unofficial beginning of the summer season. Summer won't actually be here for a few more weeks, but it always seems like summertime for me goes from about Memorial Day until Labor Day, and so that's the summertime season. And it occurs to me that there was a song written a long time ago called The Good Old Summertime, which was the first song that was actually published, first popular song ever published that was written about a season. And the reason for that is 100 years ago, it took about 6 months for a song to become popular. So the music publishers didn't want to publish a seasonal song because they figured nobody's going to want to sing about the snow time in July, and they're not going to want to sing about the falling leaves in April or May, and they're not going to want to sing about the springtime around Thanksgiving. So they never published a popular song that was written about a season until In the Good Old Summertime was presented to the music publishers, and they said, you know what, I'll bet people would sing about the good old summertime any time of the year. And so I think it's appropriate that we start off our unofficial beginning of the summer with a little waltz time, In the Good Old Summertime. A little 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. In the good old summertime, in the good old summertime, strolling down the shady lane with your baby mine, you hold her hand and she'll hold yours, and that's a very good sign that she's your Tootsie Wootsie in the good old summertime. In the good old summertime, in the good old summertime, strolling down the shady lane with your baby mine, you hold her hand and she'll hold yours, and that's a very good sign that she's your Tootsie Wootsie in the good old summertime. Well, that's a song that came out actually well over 100 years ago. It just occurred to me while we were playing that song that I do have the hit record of In the Good Old Summertime, and it's on an Edison 2-minute wax cylinder, so that shows you how old that song actually is. Yes, In the Good Old Summertime, which was, of course, written in waltz time, a little 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If we had enough time, I'd show you the difference between 3/4 time, 4/4 time, and 5/4 time, but we don't have enough time for that sort of demonstration tonight. But I will say that that song was written in waltz time. Waltz Time is brought to you in part by the Yellow River Radiator Shop, which is the best place in Toledo, Ohio to take a leak. Also brought to you in part by Stanley's Laundry and Dry Cleaning on LaGrange Street. Their motto is 20 years on the same spot. We're going to leave it go with that, yes. Anyway, so it's waltz time. Say, Walt,
Hey, what?
what time is it?
Oh, it's about 10 after 8.
Thanks, Walt. This has been Walt's time from our house to yours. It's Walt's time, yeah. All right, we're going to play another song now. Going to go up to the 1920s. And this one wound up not on an Edison wax cylinder, but on an Edison diamond disc. A tune that came out about the time that Charleston was real popular and everybody was dancing the Charleston. Well, almost everybody. And everybody loved those dances. Well, not everybody loved the dances, as the song tells. I threw out every letter and thought that I'd feel better. It seemed the proper thing to do. Gave back each little present, and though it wasn't pleasant, I threw away her picture too. I've done every single thing, and yet it isn't very easy to forget. And I wonder where my baby is tonight. I wonder how my baby is tonight. I wonder where she's gone and how she's getting on. I wonder why my baby doesn't write. I wonder if my baby's feeling blue. If she came back, I wonder what I'd do. She didn't treat me fair, and I know I shouldn't care, but I wonder where my baby is tonight. I wonder if my baby does the Charleston. I wonder who is teaching her the Charleston. While I sit and sigh, the time goes dragging by. I'd like to kill the guy who wrote the Charleston. We parted 'cause I couldn't do the Charleston. She'd still be here if I could do the Charleston. Well, I'm taking lessons now, and I'll win her back somehow. But I wonder where my baby is tonight. There you go. I wonder where my baby is tonight. That's a song I actually first learned off a great banjo player from Minnesota, Debbie Schreier. She used to play that song, and I think she learned it off of Ernie Carson's jazz band, Ernie Carson's Social Polecats, or whatever the name of the group was in those days. I wonder where my baby is tonight. Then I found the Edison diamond disc of that song, which wasn't nearly as good as the performance that Ernie Carson gave it. So we learned it, and we play it for you, and certainly hope you enjoyed that particular song. So we've had a number of people that have emailed us requests and things that they'd like to hear, and we're glad to play those that I can remember. And we had somebody ask us if we could do something religious on Wednesday night, so we'd like to take up a collection, but since there's no audience here, anybody that wants to make a contribution is welcome to do so through PayPal. But that's not what we were planning. We were planning to play something religious. Now, back 100 years ago, when ragtime was first popular, actually well over 100 years ago, ragtime piano players were kind of a disreputable lot. I mean, you didn't want to tell your mother you were a ragtime piano player for the most part. You just kind of didn't do that. So the ragtime piano players had a pretty shady reputation, and I think it was mainly because of the places that most of the ragtime piano players would play in those days. And those were places respectable people weren't supposed to go. But I really don't understand why everybody loved Ragtime if they heard it in places that proper people weren't supposed to go. Anyway, there used to be quite a number of religious sermons preached about the evils of ragtime, and ragtime piano players would fight back by playing hymns in ragtime, and that added salt to the wound. We're going to do that for you now. We're going to play a famous hymn in ragtime, and I'm not going to tell you what the title is because if you're not really into ragtime and you're not really familiar with a style of music, you actually may not even recognize this. So after we get finished, we'll tell you what it was that we just played, and then we'll play it the way it was first published in the hymnal, and you'll see what it's like to take a song that was not written in a syncopated ragtime style and to rag it up, play it in ragtime, fight back with ragtime. So we're going to do something religious now, and it's going to start off like this. All right, that's a hymn played in ragtime, and if most of the time when we're playing to a live audience, or at least an audience that we can see, I ask how many people recognize that, and about a third of the people raise their hands, and I say, okay, how many people thought it sounded familiar, but you're not quite sure? And about a third of the people raise their hands, and then I say, how many people are pretty sure you've never heard that at all before? And then about a third of the people raise their hands. I guess if we go one third, it means Wes knew that song, I kind of recognized it, and Betsy was clueless. Well, that's if all the odds are proper. You never know about statistics. Actually, 87.65% of all statistics are made up on the spot. Anyway, we're going to play that song the way it was first published in the hymnal. And you'll see what it's like to take a song that was not written as ragtime and to play it in a ragtime style. There you have it. And for those of you who still didn't recognize it, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, played in ragtime. And that gives you a better idea of what it's like to take a song that wasn't written in a ragtime style and to syncopate it and make it sound like ragtime. And I certainly hope we didn't offend anybody with that today, but I don't think we would have. Now, back when ragtime was first popular, which was actually well over 100 years ago, I always say it's been almost 100 years ago because it hadn't been 100 years yet when I first started playing ragtime, but unfortunately that was probably 50 years ago, so things have changed, times have changed. But ragtime, of course, was a very popular form of music, but not in churches. So you can imagine that if a ragtime piano player actually came into church and started playing, it would be, well, a scandal or a catastrophe, or it could make a good song, which is why we're going to play a tune for you now about that exact situation which happened down in Tennessee. Here's a little tune called When Ragtime Rosie Ragged the Rosary, another request that came in. Old Parson Lee from Tennessee, in accents loud and clear, said, "Folks, I'm awfully sorry, but our organ man ain't here. So I'd like someone to stand up and volunteer to help us out." Well, a gal named Ragtime Rosie stood up and she said that she could play. The parson seemed delighted and he said, "Just step this way." Well, then the congregation all knelt down to pray. They gave a shout, "When Ragtime Rosie ragged the rosary." Well, Deacon Alexander started in to reprimand her, but he turned around only to see that instead of praying, Rosie had the folks swaying. That ragtime beat was such a treat. It charmed their feet and got them dancing and prancing. The ragtime two-step till Parson Lee, well, he forgot the sermon and he started talking German. Listening to that low-down melody, said he, that I want you all to know this ain't no minstrel show. When Ragtime Rosie ragged the rosary. When Ragtime Rosie ragged the rosary, Deacon Alexander started in to reprimand her, but he turned around only to see that instead of praying, Rosie had the folks a swaying. That ragtime beat was such a treat. It charmed their feet and got them dancing and prancing. The ragtime two-step till Parson Lee, well, he forgot the sermon and he started talking German. Listening to that low-down melody, said he, that I want you all to know this ain't no minstrel show. When Ragtime Rosie ragged the rosary. When Ragtime Rosie ragged the rosary, they don't write them like that anymore. I don't think they're even allowed to write them like that anymore, but that's the kind of thing that they would write in the ragtime years when ragtime came along and replaced all of the old sad songs of the 1890s. people talk about the gay 90s. We're talking the 1890s when gay meant happy. And they always talk about the gay 90s, but the music actually from the 1890s, at least a large part of it, were very, very sad songs. And there's a reason for that. To make a long story short, I always assumed that popular music had always been with us. I remember all the Beatles songs when they were popular and the doo-wop songs that came before those, and my parents grew up in the years of the swing era and the big bands, and my grandparents knew all the popular songs from the Ragtime era. In fact, my grandfather played the banjo, learned to play the banjo when Ragtime was first popular. So I had always assumed that popular music had always been with us, but it turns out that's really not the case. Popular music didn't come along until about the 1890s, and that's when a fellow from Wisconsin, was that Charles K. Harris, I think, wrote a song, and it sold 1 million copies of sheet music very, very quickly, within a matter of a couple of months. And that had never really happened before. Up until that time, there had been songs that sold millions of copies, the Stephen Foster songs or some of the hymnals, but there hadn't been a song that really took off and became popular. And so all of a sudden the business people said, whoa, there's some money to be made here. There's a whole industry we can start. They could never have started it until about that time because they had to have things like the high-speed printing press where they could turn out music ker-chunk, 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 instead of Gutenberg press where the press comes down and then comes back up, and they peel the paper off and say, 1, and then they re-ink and put the press down again and bring it up and say, 2. So they needed high-speed printing, and they also needed a distribution system, which by the 1890s, the railroads were basically all over the country. So by the 1890s, a guy in New York could write a popular song on Monday, sell it to the publisher on Tuesday. By Wednesday night, it was printed on the freight cars, and by the end of the week, people in Chicago, St. Louis, and maybe as far west as California would hear the songs. And voila, the popular music industry was born. Now, the first song that actually started it all, written by Charles K. Harris, was actually a very nice little tune, and you've probably heard the chorus before. Back in those days in the music halls, the entertainers on stage would always sing the verses to the song, and typically there were 2 or 3 verses to songs in those days, and then they would distribute little cards out to the tables, and the patrons who would come into these music halls would sing along with the chorus, which is why everybody knows the chorus to these songs today, and nobody remembers the verse. But the song that was the big million seller around 1894, not 1984, that's a whole different story, 1894, the song that started the whole popular music industry, you may have heard, it goes something like this. After the ball is over, after the break of dawn, after the dancers leaving, after the crowds are gone, many the heart is aching. If you could read them all, many's the hopes that have shattered after the ball. Now that's of course a nice little melody, and we all remember the chorus, and that's the song that we sing, and even Paul Whiteman recorded that in the 1920s. some 25 years or more after that song was first published. But you never hear the verse anymore, which is a good thing, because the first verse starts off talking about this little child, and she climbs up on her great uncle's knee, and she says, "Uncle, why didn't you ever marry and have a family and lots of little kids like me?" And he said, "Well, I was planning to get married, but all of my dreams fell apart after the ball is over." And then went to the second verse where he explained that I had my sweetheart, and I had bought the ring, and I was going to propose to her, and we went to this big ball, and while I went out to get us a couple of things to drink, I came back, and she was in the arms of another man. And she tried to explain, but I wouldn't listen, and I just stormed out of there and was brokenhearted, and all of my dreams and hopes faded after the ball was over. And then the third verse, as if the two weren't enough, the third verse goes on to explain that years and years later he found out that his sweetheart was actually embracing her brother who had just returned safely from the war, and she was so glad to see him that she gave him a big hug. It was all very innocent, and that she also died all alone and old maid because her hopes and dreams were shattered after the ball was over. I understand handkerchief sales went way up when that song became popular. So, of course, the music publisher said, well, all we need is another sad, sad song, and we can make even more bucks. So the songs came out in the 1890s. "Take back your gold, for gold will never buy me." Or "She's only a bird in a gilded cage, a pitiful sight to see." Or "Father, dear father, come home with me now. The clock in the steeple strikes 2. Mother is waiting, the rent must be paid. Don't spend all your money on brew." Oh, songs that would bring a tear to a glass eye. Well, those were the songs that were popular until ragtime came along, and all of a sudden, not only did the style of music change, but the attitude changed. And instead of "take back your gold, for gold would never buy me," songs came out like, "If you ain't got any money, don't you bother coming round. You ain't the only poodle in the pound." So there were plenty of sad, sad songs from the 1890s, and some of those songs remained popular for a number of years. Here's one of those sad, sad songs that you may have heard before. "You made me what I am today. I hope you're satisfied. You dragged me down until the soul within me died. You shattered each and every dream. You fooled me from the start. And though you're not true, may God bless you. That's the curse of an aching heart." Then the ragtime piano players got a hold of it, and it sounded like, "You made me what I am today. I hope you're satisfied. You dragged and dragged me down until the soul within me died. You shattered each and every dream. You fooled me from the start. And though you're not true, may God bless you. That's the curse of an aching heart." that's a song that bring a tear to a glass eye, yes. That's the song that put the jerk in the tearjerker, the curse of an aching heart, yes. Very, very sad song. And of course, when you put it in a ragtime tempo, well, it sounds quite a bit different. We've had a number of requests, but we're going to keep playing anyway. And we're going to play a song for you now that was one of those songs that came out in the ragtime era when there was a whole series of songs about like Irishmen going over to Africa and becoming king in the tribe and all that sort of thing. And there were a whole lot of those songs written. I don't know who came up with the idea, but they seemed to sell. And we're going to play probably the most popular of those songs, and it goes a little bit like this. In the land of San Domingo lived a girl named Obi Jingo. La da 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 da. Ba 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 ba. From the fields and from the marshes came the young and oh by goshes. La da 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 da. Ba ba ba. They all spoke with a different lingo, but they all loved oh by Jingo. And every night they would sing in the pale moonlight. Oh by gee, by gosh, by gum, by jug. Oh by Jingo, won't you hear our love? We will build for you a hut. You will be our favorite nut. We'll have a lot of little oh by gollies, then we'll put them in the follies. By Jingo said, by gosh, by gee. Oh by Jiminy, please don't bother me. So they all went away singing oh by Joe, by Josh, by God, by Jingo. Oh by gee, you're the only girl for me. Oh, by gee, by gosh, by gum, by jump. Oh, by Jingo, won't you hear our love? We will build for you a hut. You will be our favorite nut. We'll have a lot of little oh by gollies, then we'll put them in the follies. By Jingo said, by gosh, by gee. Oh, by Jiminy, please don't bother me. So they all went away singing oh by gee, by gosh, by gum, by Jove, by Jingo. Oh, by gee, you're the only girl for me. They don't write them like that anymore either. Oh, by Jingo. Oh, by gosh. By Jove, by Jingo. They just don't write songs like that anymore. And, oh, yeah, by the way, yes, that song makes me thirsty. And we certainly want to thank all of the patrons of the arts who have sent plenty of things for us to consume over the past few weeks, including a glass of wine for Betsy. You know what Betsy's favorite wine is? I want to go to Florida.
Thank you, Monica.
Once again, we're having a brew from the Ernest Brewing Company.
Yes.
4342 South Detroit Avenue. And that's right near Burn Road. There's one of those traffic circles, we call them in New Jersey. My old man hated the traffic circles, and now they call them roundabouts, and they're putting them everywhere. Anyway, there's a roundabout near the Ernest Brewing Company, and despite the fact that there is, it's still a great place. I'll tell you what, you get on those things after you've been drinking all night, and you just stay on them forever. Anyway, we want to, they brew some great beers there, and we're having right now an AM/FM, no, it's AM/PM. It reminds me of the blonde that bought an AM radio and she took it back because she wanted to be able to listen to it at night. I don't usually tell blonde jokes anymore. Although there were two blondes sitting around, quarantined, and the one said to the other, it's pretty sad now that we can't travel from state to state. And the other blonde said to her, well, what's farther away from here, Florida or the moon? And the other one said, well, duh, can you see Florida from here? We'd have a rim shot if there was a drummer here tonight, but no, that's okay. We don't need to invite a drummer in just for the rim shots. We're going to play another tune for you now. Oh, but before we do, I want to say that these Wednesday night concerts are sponsored in part by the Saturday Morning Extravaganza, a wonderful radio program, and I can say that because I'm there every week, on AM 1230 WCWA, Toledo's second oldest radio station. It's still 1230 on the AM radio dial. Monday through Friday, WCWA is Fox Sports Radio when there are actual sporting events going on that they can talk about. Lately, it's been more like no sports radio, although that is quickly changing, I'm glad to say. Anyway, Monday through Friday, it's Fox Sports Radio, but WCWA never got rid of their music library, and there are some real treasures in it. And we explore that music library every Saturday morning, starting at 6 a.m. with the early morning oldies. And I know the guy that announces those because it's me. At 8 o'clock, my son John comes on with the Extravaganza warm-up show, and then I come back at 9 a.m. with a Saturday morning Extravaganza all the way until the hour of 12 noon with music that you won't find anywhere else on the radio dial unless you might be out in Lacey, Washington, where there's a radio station that plays everything. But unless you're in Lacey, Washington, you probably won't pick up stuff like we find at WCWA, and you're all welcome to join us every Saturday morning. The music starts at 6 and goes until 12 noon. So whatever time you wake up, turn the radio on, and you'll probably hear something that you like. And now we're going to get back to music. There was a very, very popular song, and I'm not sure how long ago this came out, but it's got to be over 100 years ago, because there was actually a song written about this song in 1925. Now, the original song, actually, you can still hear barbershop quartets harmonize to this tune. It's a nice old song, and it starts off like, heart of my heart, I love you. Life would be naught without you. Light of my life, my darling, I love you, I love you. I can forget you never, from you I ne'er can sever. Say you'll be mine forever, I love you. And that song became so popular that in 1925, they wrote a song about the gang that sang Heart of My Heart, and that song has stayed a lot more popular than the original. And that goes something like, heart of my heart, I love that melody, it's my favorite. Heart of my heart brings back those memories. Remember when we were kids on the corner of the street? We were rough and ready guys, but oh how we could harmonize. Heart of my heart, our friends were dearer then, beer was cheaper then. Too bad we had to part. Well, I know a tear would glisten if once more I could listen to that gang that sang Heart of My Heart. more. Heart of my heart, I love that melody. It's my favorite. Heart of my heart brings back those memories. Remember when we were kids on the corner of the street. We were rough and ready guys, but oh how we could harmonize. If you're listening at home, we want you to harmonize with us at this point. You're supposed to do it, but I didn't hear anybody harmonizing with us, so let's try it again. We were rough and ready guys, but oh how we could harmonize. That's better. Heart of my heart, our friends were dearer then, so pass a friend around. Too bad we had to part. I know a tear would glisten if I had a pot to that gang that sang Heart of my heart. To that gang that sang Heart of my heart. Well, as you could tell from that song, we believe in audience participation. And if you participated and sang along with us on that song and maybe even harmonized, thank you. And now it's time for more audience participation. It's time for you to go to the refrigerator, find a cold beer, open it up and pour it in a nice glass with a good head on it and let that settle just a little bit, and then have yourself your first today, because we believe in audience participation all the way. Those seltzers and sparkling waters don't count. It's got to be a beer. Give 3 cheers for that good old-fashioned beer. Actually, that's the song that came out when Prohibition was repealed back in 1933, but I don't know how it goes because I lost the music years ago. Let us give 1, 2, 3 cheers for that good old-fashioned beer. I don't know who wrote it or how long it was popular. I think it was popular for about 2 weeks. But that was 1933. Prohibition came along 100 years ago. It was January of 1920 that the Volstead Act went into effect. It was passed in January of 1919, but it went into effect in January of 1920, and repeal didn't actually happen until December of 1933. If you ever buy a bottle of Rolling Rock beer, you'll see the 33 on the inside back label. The inside of the front label, you can see it from the back, and it says 33, and that's in honor of repeal of Prohibition in 1933. Well, we have some people singing harmony, and we have some people drinking along with us, and we appreciate that. And it looks like we've also had a few purchased for us, and so we want to say thank you very much for that. This is Memorial Day weekend, so let's go back around 100 years and play a song that actually always sounds much newer than me. It was a song that was first published in 1915. And in those days, that's 105 years ago? And in those days, they were having all sorts of problems with people who were moving to this country, and then they sort of wanted to change this country into the places that they came from. And there was a lot of speculation that that wasn't a good idea. And so finally there was a song written saying, well, you know, you're welcome in this country, but you got to live by our rules. And the name of the song was Don't Bite the Hand That's Feeding You. It's interesting. I first heard the song in Denver, Colorado. It was played by the great piano player Johnny Maddox. And there was a gal in the audience that came up and sang the song, and I thought it was so impressive that I went looking for the music, which I eventually found, and also found an Edison Blue Amberol cylinder recording of this. And Don't Bite the Hand That's Feeding You was actually written 105 years ago, and the message sounds like it could have been written last week. Last night as I lay a-sleeping, a wonderful dream came to me. I saw Uncle Sammy weeping for his children from over the sea. They had come to him friendless and starving, when from tyrants' oppression they fled. But now they abuse and revile him, till at last in just anger he said, if you don't like your Uncle Sammy, then go back to your home or the sea, to the land from where you came, whatever be its name, but don't be ungrateful to me. If you don't like the stars on Old Glory, if you don't like the red, white, and blue, then don't act like the dog in the story. Don't bite the hand that's feeding you. Recall on the day that you landed, how I welcomed you to my shore. When you landed here empty-handed, and allegiance forever you swore. I gathered you close to my bosom, of food and of clothes you had both. So now when in trouble I need you, you will have to remember your oath. If you don't like your Uncle Sammy, then go back to your home or the sea, to the land from where you came, whatever be its name, but don't be ungrateful to me. If you don't like the stars on Old Glory, if you don't like the red, white, and blue, then don't act like the dog in the story. Don't bite the hand that's feeding you. Don't bite the hand that's feeding you. That's a song that came out in 1915, and by golly, it almost sounds like it was written yesterday. Don't bite the hand that's feeding you. They don't write them like that anymore, and maybe they should. Anyway, it's a great old tune, and certainly hope you enjoyed it. And we've got time for a couple of more songs, and I'll tell you what we're going to... Oh, we haven't played any ragtime yet tonight, have we? I suppose we should live up to my name, or at least I should, and play a real piano rag. I was talking about Johnny Maddox, the great ragtime piano player, and he just died, I think it was about a year and a half ago. Is that true? Has it been a year and a half? He just died recently, and he was up in his 90s, but he was a terrific piano player and a wonderful person. I got to know him and got to speak with him on the phone quite a number of times, met him in person in Denver. And then another good friend of mine who was a pilot used to fly from Toledo to Washington, D.C. about 3 or 4 times a month. And in those days, Johnny Maddox was playing at a place called Il Porto. And this fellow, Steve Barkin, went to see Johnny Maddox all the time and used to relay messages back and forth between us. When we owned the original Ragtime Rick's first draft at Toledo, we had a submarine sandwich named Johnny Maddox, and there are people that still crave the Johnny Maddox submarine sandwich. And when Steve Barkin took a copy of our menu to Johnny Maddox, he went around to everybody at Il Porto and said, "Look, I'm a sandwich, I'm a sandwich." And he was really tickled about that. But Johnny Maddox was a really talented fellow, really great piano player, and a real historian when it came to ragtime. And he's a fellow who is sorely missed, at least by me, although he left behind so many great recordings. And the very first record that he ever made actually was an interesting story in itself. When he was a teenager, he was working at a record store in Gallatin, Tennessee, Randy's Record Mart. Randy Wood owned the record store. And in those days, he needed people to work in the store, but Johnny Maddox wound up being a terrific salesman. People would come in and they'd want to buy a recording of somebody, and he said, well, If you like them, you'd like this other person and so forth. And he used to make a lot of great sales. And Randy Wood found out that Johnny Maddox could play the piano pretty well, played ragtime piano, learned that growing up. He had I think a great aunt that taught him a lot of the tricks of the ragtime years. And he said that his family always figured that if he was busy playing the piano, making noise, he was staying out of trouble doing other things. So he wound up becoming a terrific piano player. And Randy Wood said, well, I'll tell you what, we're busy. He had a radio station, and they used to sell their records over the radio program. And Randy Wood said, you know, if we record some of our own stuff, we can get other people to sell our records for us. And so let's get that kid into the recording studio. And so Johnny Maddox went into the recording studio and recorded two songs, two sides of a 78 RPM record. One was the St. Louis Tickle, and the other side was the Crazy Bone Rag, a great rag written by Charles L. Johnson. It took me years and years and years to find the original copy of that record, but I have one now. And the interesting thing is that wound up launching a record label. That was Dot Records. Dot Records became really, really popular and a major label during the 1950s and the early 1960s. Later on, Randy Wood sold the label and then started another one. But a lot of great artists recorded, a lot of big hits were on Dot Records, and Johnny Maddox is the one that started it. And he basically started it by playing the Crazy Bone Rag. And let's see if I remember how it goes. That's the Crazy Bone Rag. Now, it occurred to me while I was playing that song, I did hear Johnny Maddox play that song in Denver, and it sounded just like I just played it. But there's going to be somebody who's watching and listening to this program that's going to say, that doesn't sound like the way Johnny Maddox recorded it. And you're right. Johnny Maddox told me that when he recorded that song and he got to the third strain, Randy Wood didn't like it, so he substituted a third strain from a Percy Winrick rag when he recorded the Crazy Bone Rag back in 1948 or whenever it was. And at that time, he used a different strain for the Crazy Bone Rag, although the rest of it was authentic. But Johnny Maddox told me that ever since, except for that recording, he's always played it the way it was written. So that's the way Johnny Maddox actually played it. It just doesn't happen to be the way it was recorded. So, Jerry, that was the way it was supposed to sound, or at least pretty close to it. All right, well, here we are again. It's been about an hour, and right on cue, the low battery light is starting to flash. So we will say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. We certainly hope you had a little bit of fun. We certainly hope you were entertained and gave you an opportunity to forget all about this coronavirus stuff and remember the way the world used to be, and it will be again someday. So because this is Memorial Day weekend, I think we need to end with a song that was actually written by the great American composer Irving Berlin, and he wrote this for a show that he put together during World War I when he was the entertainment director for the troops at Camp Yaphank on Long Island in New York. And he put together a show they called Yip Yap Yap Hank, and that's the show that they entertained the troops with many, many, many times. And as was the standard practice in those days, Irving Berlin wrote quite a number of songs for that show, but he didn't use all of them. So the songs that they didn't use, he put in a trunk with a lot of other songs that he had written and never used. And then I think it was 1938 that a very famous singer came to him and said, we're having all sorts of political unrest and we're having all sorts of discussions these days about politics, and the country is really divided. And I would like to sing a song on my radio program that will bring us together and unite us. And Irving Berlin said, well, I think I have a song that might work. And so he dug into that trunk and the songs that were written but not used in that show, Yip Yap Yap Hank, and he found the one that he wanted. And he gave it to the songbird of the South, the voice of America, as she's been called. That was Kate Smith. She introduced it on her radio program and it became almost a second national anthem. And of course, the song I'm referring to goes like this. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. One more time now. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Well, thank you very much. much. That's how we're going to end tonight. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. When I was a kid, they called it Decoration Day, but I guess it's been called Memorial Day for a long time. Memorial Day, of course, was always the day in which we honored those members of the armed forces who didn't make it, the ones that fell in battle to our country. Veterans Day, of course, was the holiday which they originally called Armistice Day, and that was the day where we honored all of our veterans. But we want to say a special thank you to everybody who has ever served in the armed forces of the United States. Thank you for your service. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend, and we will see you all again. Good night, everybody.
We hope you've enjoyed tonight's performance of the Ragtime Rick Show. If you have, click the like button and let us know. Don't forget, there's more where that came from. Be sure to subscribe to the Grafing Productions YouTube channel. And while you're at it, hit that notification bell so you can be sure to catch every new video. It takes a lot of resource to put on a concert like this. To help us make more, please contribute to our PayPal. That's paypal.me/ragtimerick. Thanks for watching.